Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to use this Excel attendance grading tool. The first thing you're going to do is, if I've linked you to the Google form, you're going to go through the Google form to the Google Sheet. If I've linked you to the Google Sheet, you can just go into the Google Sheet and fast forward through this very first part. If you are at the Google form, the first thing you want to do is find the one that corresponds to the class you're a TA for. So here's 205. And if we go down a little bit, that's too far. There's 310. So click on that. And then you want to go to responses once you can. And then you're going to click on this little green button here, which takes you to the Google Sheet. And if I've linked you to the Google Sheet, then this is where you're going to start. So what you've got here is the timestamp. This is when they submitted their word of the day. You've got their ASU ID number that they're asked to type in each time, and you have the word of the day. I'm ignoring the timestamp. Usually I use it to make sure that they're entering it during class, but since this semester is a little different, I am allowing them to submit it, when they're watching the recorded lecture. So we're just going to completely ignore timestamp. So we're going to select just these first two, extra and phantom limb. Okay. So we're going to go Control C to copy that. If you usually right click and do copy, Sheets doesn't let you do that. Then what you want to do is you want to go to the VLOOKUP grading tool and find where it says from Google Form and click right here, and this is where you want to paste your responses. You can either Control V or you can right click and paste at this point. So I'm going to Control V. Okay. Now we want to populate the ID. This should say SISID, not SRSID. So the way that you get that, and this is the only time you're going to have to do this part of it, is you're going to go to this other file that I've given you, which is the export of our class gradebook, which looks like this. So what you want to do is you want to look up here at the top and you see this is the student's name. This is their ID on Canvas. You don't want that. And here's their SIS user ID. This is their ASU ID. I don't know why it calls it that. And this is all their ASU Right ID here, the SIS login. So what you're going to do is you're just going to copy all of these ID numbers. Control C, and back to our VLOOKUP grading tool, and right here under SIS ID we're going to Control V, and that is what we have. Okay, so let's do some changing. The first thing that we're going to have to do is Excel will be totally cool with some things being capital and some things not being capital, and that's great. So you don't have to worry about that. But what you do have to worry about is these little exclamation points. That's going to change the answer that Excel's looking for. So if we tell it the word of the day is extra, and it's looking for extra with no exclamation point, it's going to think that they got the wrong word of the day. So we can't let that happen. Also, extra with Mario Lopez is not acceptable. Extra in all caps is. Extra with 2 exclamation points is not. And extra with 1 exclamation point is not. Okay. So we've got phantom limb, blah, 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 blah. This one, we need to get rid of all of this, whatever this is. Okay, so we're going to delete that. And then this one says phantom pain. Of course, they got the right answer, but for some reason they put phantom pain instead of phantom limb, so we're just going to change that for them. Okay, now there's one other thing I want to show you. What if there are a lot of answers that are spelled wrong? Now, this could happen depending on what the word of the day is. So let's say that all of these people thought phantom was spelled like fish, and not like phantom. They have an F. And you know, I mean, you could go through and you could change it, but at some point, when is it not worth your time to change it? When is it easier just to change the formula? So I'll show you how to do that. And it's up to you whether you want to change the formula or change the answer. Okay, so let's take a look at the formula really quickly. What we've got here is, it's an if statement. VLOOKUP is just going to look up things over here and match it up to the ID number. So it wants to know if the ID number over here, if this ID number matches any ID number here, then you're going to pull something. So we need to change what it's looking for, not for. So it's looking for this ID number right here, and it's looking in this field. Well, this field is going to change based on how many people are in class that day and how many answers you have that you're grading. So A3 is where it starts, and that's okay, A3. And it goes to B22, and that's definitely not enough. So let's scroll down and see where the extras end, and they end at B73. So all we got to do is click in here, delete, and say 73. Okay, so let's get back in here. Is there anything else we need to change? Yes, which is right here, the word of the day. I have it set to C, and that's obviously not the word of the day. The word of the day is extra. And now we have a 1, and that's exactly what we should have. So what it's saying is if this ID number matches over here and it gets the word of the day right, it gets a 1. If it doesn't, it gets a 0. Now there's one other thing that you have to do, which is once you get this top person set up completely correctly, you want to copy it down through the rest of these other students. What you can do is, if you go down here to the right corner, see how your thing changes from a big puffy white plus sign to a little black plus sign? When it gets to be a little black plus sign, double click. Double click again. There we go. So what that does, it's called the autofill, and it just takes your formula and fills it all the way down. So you can check right here what's going on in this formula is if G68, which is this ID number right here, equals anything over here, and it specifically has to equal extra, then it gets a 1, otherwise it gets a 0. These things that say NA, those are the zeros. In fact, you know what? I'm going to change this slightly before I send it to you and say if error. And then we'll come over here and give it the value if there's an error, which will be 0. Okay, so that guy says 0. We want to fill it all the way down, and actually I want to fill it all the way up too. Okay, so we're still looking at G3, A3 to, okay, it's all good. So now where we had an error, it shows up as a 0, which is exactly what it should do. Great. So now we want to add the next day, the phantom limb day. Type in OG27. I don't know if that's the right day, but that's okay. We want to copy this over. So highlight it all, Control C, and then you have to hit enter because otherwise you're going to be altering the formula. So go ahead and hit enter after you copy it and paste it here. Now we have to change it again. So we do still want to look for this ID number, but we're going to change where we're looking. So we have to scroll down to see where the phantom limb starts. And it's right here at A74. We're going to change this to A74. And then where does it stop? B136. Okay, so delete 136. Okay. And now we want to change what it's looking for from extra to phantom limb. And we're going to do our cool autofill. Nice. Okay, so there are quite a bit of ones, but there's also quite a few zeros, and those might be the people that have typed in phantom limb with an F. Phantom. Well, I don't know how you say it. I guess it's pronounced exactly the same way. So we can set this up. Again, you can go in and change things if that seems easier to you. Then you can stop watching the video right now because that's all you need to know. And if you want to learn how to change it, then I'll show you how to do that. Actually, I see one other thing right here. This person has way too long of an ID number, and I honestly don't know how to change that because we don't know what their ID number actually is, so we don't know how to help them. I guess what's going to have to happen is they're just going to have to get a bunch of zeros and email us, and we'll ask them what the hell's going on with their ID number. Okay, so like I said, if you want to if you're not good with Excel and you want to just go in and change these manually, that's fine. You can stop watching. And if you do want to know how to make it a little bit easier on you, then keep watching. So what we're going to do is if VLOOKUP blah, 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 blah equals phantom limb, then it's a 1. Otherwise, it's a 0. And this is where we want to add something. So we're going to delete the 0, and then we're going to copy if VLOOKUP equals phantom limb is a 1. We're going to Control C. We're going to click after the comma and paste this in. So now, if phantom limb is a 1, or if it is phantom limb, it gets a 1. If it's not, then we go into this next if loop. So if VLOOKUP equals blah, 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 and what it's looking for here is going to be phantom limb with an F. Then it gets a 1, otherwise it gets a 0. And we also need to throw in another close parenthesis here. We should be good. So then let's do the autofill. Did anybody get filled in? Doesn't look like it. Have I done something wrong? If VLOOKUP is this person, we're looking for phantom limb. They get a 1. Otherwise, we go into a new if loop. Should be right. Yeah, okay. Looks like we have it right. So let's double check. Let's see. Someone who wrote phantom limb. Here's one of them. 1214639959. 1214. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to manually try to figure out if we can see that this person did get a 1, and if they did, then we're good. And if they didn't, then I'll have to figure out what is wrong with that formula. There we go. And they did get a 1. Okay, so their phantom limb with an F is accepted. These people just didn't type in any word of the day. And I guess that's the way that they're going to do it. So this, typing this in like this worked. So we're looking for phantom limb with an F, phantom limb with a PH. If they have either one of those, they get a 1. And that's great. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to upload this into Canvas. If you don't know how to do that, I will show you with another video. Okay, good luck, and thanks for taking the time to watch and put in these grades.